Breaking. King Charles has summoned the Prime Minister to a late-night emergency audience, shattering more than 7 decades of royal convention. At 11:47 p.m., the Prime Minister arrived at Buckingham Palace visibly exhausted, as pressure closed in from every side. What was officially discussed remains sealed, but a leak just hours later threatens to rip the government apart. Palace sources called it the most volatile clash between the Crown and a Prime Minister since the abdication era, and the aftermath has sent Westminster into full-scale turmoil. If you want to understand how this constitutional shockwave unfolds, subscribe now, because the next 72 hours could redefine Britain's path. The crisis ignited 3 days earlier when the Prime Minister stood before Parliament to unveil sweeping immigration reforms, striking a defiant tone. Asylum claims decided within 6 months, 50,000 refugees resettled each year, and public opposition brushed aside. Watching from Windsor, a monarch long associated with continuity and restraint reached a breaking point. At 9:15 p.m. last night, the Prime Minister's phone rang with a message few leaders have ever heard. His Majesty demands your immediate presence at Buckingham Palace tonight, attendance required. Advisors were left stunned, knowing such summons are reserved for national emergencies, not political confrontation, but Charles was not making a request, this was a command. Within 90 minutes, the Prime Minister's motorcade slipped through the palace gates under darkness, with no cameras, no press, and no witnesses, leaving only the King and his Prime Minister alone in the 1844 room for what insiders describe as the harshest rebuke in modern British history. What intensified the moment was what the Prime Minister reportedly carried with him, a folder labeled Constitutional Reform Proposals. According to a palace staff member speaking anonymously to The Telegraph, the documents outlined plans to remove ceremonial royal powers, cut civil list funding by 40%, and shift royal patronages to elected officials. The source claims the King saw the title, turned pale, and said, "You brought these here, into my home," marking the point where the confrontation truly ignited. For the next hour and 43 minutes, raised voices echoed beyond the doors, an almost unheard-of breach of royal protocol. One footman with 28 years of service said he had never witnessed anything comparable. The palace walls are built to seal history inside, but that night, fury carried through stone. And as this confrontation unfolded, British veterans who once served with honor slept on city streets. Thomas Mitchell, a 71-year-old Falklands veteran, was found dead behind a Tesco in Brixham last Tuesday after repeatedly pleading for housing help. 17 letters sent, none answered. He was found holding his service medals, a stark reminder of a man who gave everything to Britain and was left behind by the very system meant to protect him. His daughter, Sarah Mitchell, later spoke to ITV in an interview that has now been watched 8.3 million times, her voice breaking as tears fell. "My father survived a war overseas but couldn't survive British bureaucracy," she said, adding that he served his country only to be left to die alone in a car park. The clip has torn through the nation, shared by pensioners, working families, and even young people unfamiliar with the Falklands conflict, because the injustice feels undeniable and deeply painful. At the same time, migrants arriving by boat are placed immediately into high-end hotels with catered meals, internet access, financial support, and healthcare that many British pensioners wait months to receive. The Daily Mail reported last week that £8 million was spent housing 200 migrants in a single seaside hotel in Kent, around £40,000 per person, while former service members sleep rough. Freedom of Information documents also reveal that 73 hotels across the country are now used as permanent migrant accommodation, not temporary shelters but coastal resorts, city hotels, and countryside inns offering gyms, dining, and leisure facilities. The Grovina Hotel in Torquay, which normally charges £145 per night, is among them, with the government paying roughly £127 per room each night for migrant families. Do the calculation yourself. While British families can barely afford a short break, migrants are placed in open-ended hotel stays funded by taxpayers. At the same time, elderly citizens who contributed all their lives are rationing heat, choosing between food and warmth, and passing away alone in cold council flats. The contrast has become so stark, so ethically corrosive, that even lifelong Labour voters are walking away. Margaret Parsons, a retired nurse from Durham who backed Labour for 45 years, told ITV she could no longer support a party that treats outsiders better than its own veterans. Then events took an extraordinary turn. King Charles, a monarch who spent decades steering clear of political conflict, crossed a line his mother never did. During that midnight meeting, palace sources say he went far beyond expressing concern and issued a direct warning. According to 3 officials who spoke anonymously to The Times, Charles told Starmer, "You are tearing at the social fabric of this country. The people feel betrayed, and so do I. If this continues, you leave me no choice but to consider measures no modern monarch has ever taken." That single word, measures, sent shockwaves, because buried deep within Britain's constitutional framework are dormant royal authorities, the theoretical power to dismiss a government, dissolve parliament, or withhold royal approval from legislation, rights that still exist on paper but have not been used for more than 3 centuries. Or was Charles actually signaling the removal of Starmer from office? That question has now ignited fierce debate among constitutional scholars. Professor David Blackwell of Cambridge told BBC Newsnight that the royal authority to dismiss a prime minister technically still exists, and has never been formally erased, adding that if Charles believes Starmer has lost public confidence and is acting against the nation's interests, precedent from 1834 suggests intervention would be legally possible. That was the last time a monarch removed a sitting government, when King William IV dismissed Lord Melbourne, unleashing a crisis that reshaped British democracy. Now, 191 years later, history appears to be echoing. Palace insiders say the king was visibly furious, speaking with a force they had never witnessed, with one aide likening the moment to a father confronting a son who had betrayed the family. Another source said Charles invoked his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, 3 times, warning that she always believed preserving balance was paramount and foresaw a moment like this. Witnesses claim Starmer sat rigid and drained of color, unable to answer. When he finally departed the palace at 1:30 a.m., cameras captured him staring forward with empty eyes. The consequences were immediate. Within hours the story leaked to The Telegraph, then The Sun, and by mid-morning every major outlet was carrying it. Markets reacted fast, confidence evaporated, and the pound slid 2%. A 3% plunge against the dollar erased £18 billion from Britain's value in a single day, while the FTSE 100 sank 4.1%, its worst fall since the pandemic, and pension funds lost an estimated £4.7 billion. Inside Labour, resignations began to cascade, protests spread nationwide, and polling showed a historic collapse, with even Labour voters backing the king over their own prime minister. Britain now teeters on the edge. A no-confidence vote is looming, markets are rattled, allies are uneasy, and the monarchy has openly confronted the government, making the next 7 days potentially decisive for the country's future. The central question is unavoidable: did Starmer fatally damage his own government by challenging the king? Or can he survive the most severe political crisis of the modern era? And could Nigel Farage emerge as the ultimate beneficiary? Online, the reaction has been explosive, with X, Facebook, and TikTok turning into digital battlegrounds as hashtags like #DefendTheKing and #StarmerOut surged worldwide within minutes. Videos of British veterans describing homelessness and neglect have drawn more than 60 million views, fueling public anger. The polling is brutal. YouGov reports that 71% of Britons believe Charles was right to confront Starmer, including 53% of Labour voters, while Ipsos shows just 19% now trust Starmer to lead the country, down from 47% 2 weeks earlier, leaving him with a net approval rating of -42, the lowest ever recorded for a modern prime minister. Focus groups across Labour strongholds such as Manchester, Liverpool, and Newcastle reveal working-class voters abandoning the party in unprecedented numbers. One voice in Newcastle summed up the mood bluntly: if the king believes Starmer has crossed the line, then he's crossed the line. From there, unrest spread fast across 15 British cities. In London, more than 80,000 people marched from Trafalgar Square to Parliament Square, chanting calls for accountability at the very top. Birmingham saw mass demonstrations outside the town hall, while in Edinburgh, Scottish nationalists and unionists, normally bitter rivals, stood side by side in opposition to Labour's immigration stance. Cardiff's city centre was effectively shut down for 6 hours, and in Manchester, Labour's historic stronghold, 15,000 people gathered outside the town hall demanding Starmer's resignation. These were not party activists but ordinary citizens, nurses, teachers, factory workers, many lifelong Labour voters now holding signs declaring, "You've lost us," and "The King speaks for Britain." This went far beyond routine opposition. It looked like a country pushing back. Inside Number 10, order collapsed. Ministers argued openly in corridors, emergency meetings ran back-to-back with no outcomes, and civil servants quietly questioned whether instructions from the Prime Minister's office still carried authority. One Whitehall source told Politico the machinery of government had effectively stalled, with no clarity over who was truly in charge. Senior Labour figures were reportedly livid, with West Streeting overheard accusing Starmer of undoing decades of party rebuilding in a matter of days. Deputy Chief Whip Rosie Winterton was seen leaving Downing Street late at night in tears, telling colleagues she could not continue. Even internal WhatsApp groups, once meant for policy coordination, have transformed into digital battlegrounds openly discussing Starmer's removal. One internal faction known as New Direction now reportedly includes 47 Labour MPs, among them 5 cabinet members, with leaked messages showing open discussions about leadership challenges, protest coordination, vote timing, and potential successors. Angela Rayner's name appears repeatedly, 23 times, alongside messages such as, "Angela's ready. The party's ready. We just need the moment," signaling she is no longer defending Starmer but positioning herself for what comes next. Chancellor Rachel Reeves, once Starmer's closest ally, has fallen conspicuously silent, with sources saying she is carefully building support through quiet meetings with business leaders, union figures, and senior MPs ahead of a possible leadership move. Across the aisle, opposition figures are watching Labour unravel with open satisfaction, as Conservative MP Jacob Rees-Mogg told GB News that Starmer had managed to unite the country against himself. Even Starmer's core allies have refused multiple times to publicly back him, insisting only that the party comes first, a message widely read as abandonment. The most damaging blow, however, emerged from leaked documents showing that senior Labour officials knew weeks in advance their immigration plans would spark severe public backlash, that veterans groups were preparing demonstrations, and that the King had already raised serious concerns through the cabinet secretary. Internal emails reveal the Home Secretary warning Starmer that the palace believed pressing ahead would trigger a constitutional crisis, to which Starmer allegedly replied that policy was for the government alone to decide, words that may now define the moment his authority began to collapse. And yet the government pressed ahead, brushing aside royal warnings, a move that painted the Prime Minister as defiant and reckless, openly challenging the monarchy while the country absorbed the fallout. The pressure intensified when Conservative leader Rishi Sunak tabled a formal vote of no confidence, scheduled for Monday, with several Labour MPs quietly conceding they may refuse to shield their own government, and some even prepared to side with the opposition, an extraordinary break from tradition. At the same time, Nigel Farage launched emergency events nationwide, framing his message around loyalty, heritage, and national identity, declaring that while others undermine the King, his movement stands in defense of British values. His rhetoric drew on moments of national resolve, and the impact was immediate. Reform UK surged from 18 to 27% in just 3 days, overtaking Labour nationally and closing in on the Conservatives, as donations and new memberships poured in. Abroad, the crisis deepened Starmer's isolation, with officials in Washington voicing unease over Britain's stability, EU figures in Brussels expressing relief that the UK exited before the turmoil, France's president remarking that Britain is learning the cost of discarding experienced leadership, and Canada's Prime Minister pointedly praising constitutional monarchy as a pillar of democratic order, a message widely seen as a quiet rebuke. In Australia, opposition leader Peter Dutton condemned Starmer's confrontation with the King as disgraceful, while New Zealand's Prime Minister Christopher Luxon warned that Britain's turmoil could undermine democratic stability worldwide, sending a clear signal that Starmer has isolated the country both at home and abroad. The coming week will be decisive. Monday brings the no-confidence vote. Tuesday, the King will deliver his first public address since the crisis, emphasizing duty, tradition, and national unity while subtly critiquing government policy. Wednesday, Labour MPs will convene emergency talks on leadership. Thursday, the Bank of England will hold an urgent session to manage economic fallout. And Friday, Reform UK will launch its election campaign to exploit Labour's collapse. This is no political theatre, it is real-time regime change. with the government unraveling floor by floor as Starmer finds himself cornered, desperate, and abandoned. The questions dominating the nation are stark. Did Starmer destroy his own government by confronting the king? Or can he survive the gravest political crisis in modern British history? Could Nigel Farage actually seize power in the next election? With pressure mounting from every direction, the monarchy, his party, the public, and international allies, the no-confidence vote, royal intervention, economic turbulence, and mass protests have collided into a perfect storm, threatening to bring down a government faster than anyone could have imagined. Meanwhile, Nigel Farage and Reform UK are poised to turn the turmoil into unprecedented opportunity, seizing the moment as ordinary citizens, veterans, and pensioners, long ignored, demand accountability and justice. The coming days are critical. Every statement, every leak, every decision could determine whether Starmer survives politically or is swept aside. The monarchy's subtle but forceful assertion of authority, combined with public outrage, has set the stage for a constitutional crisis unseen in centuries. Parliament, the media, and social platforms are amplifying every moment, leaving no margin for error. One misstep could accelerate the government's collapse. One bold move could reshape Britain's political landscape entirely. The nation stands at a crossroads. Will the monarchy assert its power to preserve tradition, or will the government push forward and risk permanent alienation? Can Labour recover from internal rebellion, or will Farage's insurgent movement rise to dominance? Every eye is on Westminster, every citizen a witness, as the consequences of Buckingham Palace's midnight confrontation unfold in real time. This is not just politics, it is accountability, power, and the very framework holding a nation together. Britain is watching, the world is watching, and the outcome remains uncertain. The question is no longer whether the government survives, but who will lead Britain into its next chapter, and what legacy will emerge from this unprecedented constitutional showdown.